everyone. Welcome to Caster Calls with ZombieGrub, episode 7. I'm here with LemonKiwi, which probably many people who are in StarCraft might not really recognize, but if you're involved in Overwatch at all or general esports, then you'll definitely recognize her. LemonKiwi, thank you so much for
Hi.
coming onto the podcast. You didn't really know me. I'm not calling in any favors here. You're just really very nice to be available for this, so thank you.
It's cool, and especially to talk to another woman caster. I'm sure we're going to go over a ton of topics that we're both going to relate about. So thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, that's kind of the goal, but also looking to get a different perspective than the old dreary StarCraft 2, StarCraft 2, StarCraft 2, which all my listeners are very familiar with, but rather get a look into, one of the biggest esports that's out there, Overwatch, as well as one of the bigger tier 2 scenes for an esports that's existed. So I'm really looking forward to it. But I am actually coming in here completely new. Like I said, I've actually never talked to you before, and so far I've been like at least friends, with everyone I've
Yeah.
talked to. But yeah, you're just brand new to me. All right, so give me a quick, I guess, breakdown of how you got into commentary and when you first made it big.
So I started actually in Call of Duty probably like 8 years ago or so, where I just kind of played for fun, had groups. I thought maybe I wanted to get into competitive. And then we had a bunch of gals that were starting like tournaments, and just gals would be playing. So then they're like, oh, well, we should get girls to also cast too. And then I kind of volunteered because I've always been really nerdy about just analyzing games and stuff. So I started as a color commentator in Call of Duty, and I did that for a few years. And Call of Duty has like a new game every year. So I just did so many games of that. And eventually, the games got different every time, and I kind of lost my love for Call of Duty. And that's about like a year into when Overwatch came out. So I was a little bit late to the party when it came to Overwatch. So I just started casting that, and we had this group called Broadcast GG, which is this amateur group of casters that would just kind of learn off of each other, share tips. And what we would do is we would offer teams, instead of getting their own VOD recorder, we would be like, hey, if you let us cast your scrims, we'll give you a VOD of, some analysis, and hey, you could get to be casted. So that's pretty cool. So we would cast scrims. And then eventually, Open Division never had like a broadcast. So Open Division in Overwatch is like the tier 3 scene. Then you graduate to Trials, and then Trials you go to Contenders, which is like the tier 2 official league. So there was no Open Division broadcast, so Blizzard eventually let us kind of do it, and it wasn't a big deal. None of us were paid. We just did it for fun. And we kind of grew from Open Division to eventually getting rights to do Trials. And then from Trials, we got offered sort of some other regions and Contenders, such as China, I think, or our first region was South America, which they never had an English stream. They were always had their Spanish and Portuguese stream. So then we got to do their English stream. And again, we weren't like paid. We just kind of like were offering a service to the community because we were growing casters. And then a lot of people realized like, hey, these upcoming casters are really cool. So we got Contenders South America. Then we did China. And then some of us moved on. So like my co-caster LegDay got Contenders Europe pretty soon. And then just this year, I got Contenders North America. So that was that. And then just in November this past year, I got offered World Cup to cast with Jake. So that was like, I guess my big break. So it's been cool to go through the evolution of casting, I guess.
Yeah, you seem to have done it pretty swiftly. Again, talking to so many StarCraft casters, we're talking about people who also came in kind of at the birth of what we know as esports now back in 2010. So sometimes we talk about a big process, me and a friend of mine not even getting a really big offline casting gig for like five
Oh,
years.
wow.
Yeah, but putting in the work. I mean, it has a lot to do with branding and all that, but we'll get into that later. But it actually sounds like you kind of not rushed through it, but it sounds like you actually were pretty quick. When was Overwatch actually released? 2016?
Oh, geez. Overwatch release. I came in like a year later. So it was released in 2016. So I think I really started casting or even playing the game in 2017. So a lot of people told me like I wasn't going to make it because like if you weren't getting into a game in beta, like all the talent was already going to be established. You had your boomers and your OGs there. It feels quick to maybe, I guess, how long it like the 5 years you were telling me about. It's still been, I think, like 3 years I've been casting Overwatch. Probably actually 2 or something around like that. And it feels like a long process, and I still don't feel like I'm anywhere near a peak because, you know, you're still at tier 2, and then there's, you know, your Premier League. But I think there was just a lot of opportunities to have a platform to showcase new talent on, like without open division and without trials, or even without Contenders South America and China, a lot of us wouldn't have had an opportunity to even show what we're made of. And I think that's why like a tier 2 and a tier 3 scene is so important in so many esports, not because of the players you're trying to grow, but also new talent coming in, because, you know, like eventually people are going to retire, go to other games, so you need new casters to come up. So
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. It is really cool to hear that you still had you still have the same story, even if it's a bit faster than other people I've talked to, where you just got together and you liked casting and you liked analyzing the games, and then you did it for free
yeah.
for a while, and then eventually got noticed. I mean, that is kind of like the esports story, but you know, it felt. If I'm ever overly critical of Overwatch, please stop me. I have my own
That's okay.
opinions, but I actually really do enjoy the games, and I do enjoy the game, and I actually really respect the casters. But it did feel like really early on, Overwatch was already known that it was going to be more manufactured. That is to say that even with the grassroots scene, as it was, they also knew the signs were there. The rumors had started about Overwatch League. I actually, this might even be unknown to my regular listeners. Rifkin and I on Base Trade TV years ago, we had a contact in Blizzard. We really wanted to push for Overwatch, and we got into the beta, and we were going to do events and whatnot. But we were a tournament organizer who couldn't really afford to pay 6 people at once.
Yeah.
So making events was very, very difficult, and we weren't sure how to otherwise get basically casting gigs in the scene. And then very quickly, as I was saying, it just felt like it was something that was already almost predetermined. Rumors were already starting about big pickups and Blizzard wanting to do something really big with it. And it felt like it was, as you said, people told you, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, you can't make it. You weren't in beta. But it did feel that way. So it's really amazing to me to hear that you did the natural thing. It feels like in esports, going from a little seedling, all right, to like a full blown flower. And you actually did the passion into the organizing, into the reaching out to other people, and then just eventually climbing your way up, which is actually really, I guess, relieving to hear.
Yeah.
Because I was so afraid that Overwatch was going to just be just about Overwatch League, I
Mhm.
guess, you know, those casters up there and just those players up there.
Yeah, it was. I think that's the biggest mistake I did in Call of Duty, or I think a lot of amateur casters do, is that you go through this phase of like, well, I'm really bad at what I do. Okay, I'm figuring out what I'm doing. Okay, I think I'm really good. And once you get to that point, you think you're really good. You, at least me and a lot of people that I see expect to get calls. You think that you're putting yourself out that you're waiting for a phone call, you're waiting for an email, and turns out that a lot of, you know, the premier esports don't actually do that much research in their developing talent. You know, they have their own bubble going on, they have their own things to worry about, and they actually probably get recommendations from the talent within or some friends that they know, and you kind of wait for this email forever that will sometimes never come, and then you kind of have this doubt of like, why didn't I get the job, or why is this person getting it, why is no one calling me? And what I did different in Overwatch is that like I started to take it into my own hands. For World Cup, I sent about 3 emails within the year of just like, here's my reel, I'd really love to help out. And like, not just, hey, give me a job, but like, here are the things that I can do for you. I think I suggested like, hey, I'd really love to do interviews. Hey, I know French. I can like translate some stuff for you. I can do content on the side. And I was just harassing, might be a strong word, but I was just like, hey, please, I'd really love to help. And eventually they were like, hey, yeah, we got like 100 qualifier matches on Thursday. We definitely need some people. And then I got in through there, and then I eventually convinced them like, hey, I think we're working really hard. Could we maybe get a semifinal, or maybe one of these Saturday matches? So I wasn't even supposed to cast on the World Cup stage until I was like, hey, I think I'm good enough. I've worked really hard. I think you guys should really try me on the stage. And then again, they believed in me to go through that. And not only that, I think the Overwatch community and also the Overwatch developers and all the people really want to push for diversity too. Like in other esports that I've worked in, being a female caster was kind of frowned upon. You know, it was like, yeah, you know, we prefer the men to kind of lead our big ticket events, and you know, women would be nice, but we don't really care. Well, as like Overwatch, I felt like we really want to give you a chance. And now in Contenders NA, we had, you know, a female for every duo, and like deserving to be there, not just because of some, you know, diversity card. It was like we have Overwatch has been encouraging females and just diversity so much that now it feels really okay to be part of this industry now, and I never got that in other esports.
Well, especially I think coming up maybe in some of the earlier years, you're talking about Call of Duty, maybe back to 2015, maybe 2014
Yeah.
type stuff. But also just that genre. I mean, Call of Duty especially has that frat bro image.
Yeah.
And then yeah, and then in general, shooters also have more of that image, even though you know, abilities-based shooters are a little bit different. There definitely still was that image, but it's also maybe particularly difficult in those areas. You're right. It's actually difficult in all areas. Yeah, I always we're already getting into the heavy topics. Oh my god. So there's actually a very interesting question I haven't really got to ask anyone else, but or not even question. I'm just gonna
Okay.
talk. All right, like it's a podcast about you, but
Do
I'm gonna
it.
go. But yeah, you know, people would occasionally throw out the "you only got the job because you're a
Oh,
girl"
yeah.
type thing.
I hate that.
It's not too bad. Like being in the StarCraft community for so long, people kind of got like used to me, I guess.
Yeah.
But it still happened, of course. People were going to be mean, and then people were going to be mean and sexist,
Yes.
right? And that, of course, happened. But I always, you know, there was always a bit of me that was like, no, but maybe, but no, but hold on, maybe, because I really did believe in my abilities, but it was always there in the back of your mind, as well as not just like, am I only here, but like, is that the only quality that people are looking for in me? I got my answer pretty brutally when I got hired for BlizzCon 2017. It felt like I did a good job. I got hired for an event right after that, did the event right before next year's BlizzCon, and then promptly did not get hired again, which I don't know if it's the same for Overwatch, but basically the people who were going to BlizzCon were always. If you went once, you did not get reinvited. So when that happened, I had this like smack in the face, like, oh yeah, it's definitely, people are definitely not hiring me because I'm a woman. If I was a woman and they saw that as a desirable trait, I would be up on that stage every fucking year. So I can easily say, no, that's not true. To almost anyone who brings up that criticism. But do you ever have that doubt in your mind where you're like, wait, like, am I just getting like a +10 bonus because I'm a woman?
It's tough, and you definitely get that feeling every time because it's always going to be a factor of like, well, how much of an advantage did this give me over male counterparts? Like, am I getting that +10, you know, bonus? And it definitely comes up, but I think I've gotten to the point where I just started having a lot more confidence in my ability and just realized that when I compare apples to apples, I compare like the content of what I'm saying, how I'm delivering it, my knowledge of the scene, my brand within the scene, my connections, everything. Like there's so many reasons what makes a caster a good caster. When I compare myself to people I would be worried about, like, oh, well, should this person have gotten in over me? And I kind of evaluate all those character factors and I say, no, I really think that I work the hardest and I have all these things going for me that maybe on some technical levels, maybe this guy or this person is a little bit better for me here, but I have all these things beat on these other sections. So I definitely have gotten more confidence that at this point, I don't think I would be given a gimme card. Like you said, I think if I was genuinely not as good as someone else, I would not be hired and brought back. Um, but it's definitely something you think about. And I think it's a lot of things where people are salty when they think of their favorite caster not getting picked up and then they see women or they see whoever. They'll be like, well, why would you pick that person over this person? And then they start to come up with reasons like, oh, that person's a woman or oh, that person's this. And people reach, you know? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's what's more obnoxious is just convincing people that it's actually like a sexist thing as
they
well.
don't want to
Like the
believe
weirdest thing
it.
about that is someone's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the weirdest thing when someone's like, you suck because you're a woman, and you're like, wow, that person's sexist, and someone else is like, well, hold on, And you're like, wait, what do you mean? Hold on, like it's sexist.
That's like clearly sexist. And they're like, no, but I would say that to anybody. If you were a man, I would also tell you suck. And it's like, no, though, no.
Yeah. Actually, this was one thing that I really wanted to bring up, was that you made a tweet that I felt, into my bones. You made a tweet about how you would get criticized on your play-by-play pretty much purely because you have a woman's voice.
Mhm.
You are a woman, and women typically do not fill that play-by-play role. It's changing for sure as the years roll by, and Pansy is one of the most famous play-by-play woman casters. But otherwise, it's always more like the bit more timid, a bit more analytical. Maybe they only fill the role on the desk, and maybe not actually as a commentator type thing. So it almost is another step above breaking into the industry, is to be a play-by-play caster. But yeah, you made that tweet, and I felt it so hard because as someone who needed to work on her play-by-play, who needed to get better as a commentator, I wanted to include that as an option. I was always afraid of having the critique. She doesn't have a good voice because she's a woman. Just like, that is the critique. Do you ever get those critiques of just like, yeah, she just can't? And how do you deal with them if you do?
Yeah, it was hard because I had a conversation with someone who's actually in the Premier League about who belongs and doesn't belong in the top level of esports. And, people always like to reach towards sports, right? And just like what a voice is supposed to sound like in commentating. And you always, like, when you listen to sports, it's always kind of the same white old sounding people, right? Like it's just the same voice over
Yeah.
and over. And even sports has a hard time getting like, females on the mic. But either way, he just said that like if you have a different sounding voice, you won't make it because that's just not what the product is supposed to sound like. That's not what people are used to hearing. So you're just not going to be liked if you sound different. And that hit me too because I have a friend who has maybe more on the like even men who have like a more feminine-ish voice. They kind of like I have a friend who has like maybe a higher range voice, and he gets critiqued like a lot. It's kind of the same thing of like can't stand this voice. And I just think it's really unfair, but also it is the way it is. But I think there is a way that we can kind of get the audience used to hearing something different, and that's why you and I and other people need to stick around and just pave that way for people. But I've definitely gotten the criticism over that my voice is just, oh, don't be too hyped because your voice just gets a certain way and blah, blah, blah. And I've had to go through like vocal exercises just to like lower my voice to make sure it just sounds like as deep and so it just gives me more range so that if I do get hype, I'm not getting into like that squeaky level. And there's just so less range that a woman like has to work with from starting off a play and then going up hype. Like you just don't have as much than a man who just starts so much lower. And even when men get high, they never get that criticism of like, oh, this man is being squeaky, And I think a lot of people like have this deep misogyny of they just don't like also hearing women get loud. They don't like women talking over men. They don't like there is that deep rooted thing going on that we don't have to get into. And I try and tell people, like you said, that, you're being a little sexist, telling me that I'm screeching is not criticism to me. If you're telling me I have issues with my vocal range and I should like control that better, that's like something I can actively work on. But telling a woman to stop screeching is just pure sexism. And I try and explain people the language that they're using to criticize me is not the same language they would use to criticize a male counterpart. And that I know maybe deep down they don't mean to be sexist. I try to explain it to them and they just like don't want to understand. And then when you try and talk about these sexism topics of like you are treating me differently than someone else, they try and go back on, no, I just hate the way you cast because of the way you are, not because your gender, even though they're pointing at something that is directly because of your sex. And just people also don't want to like believe that they're being sexist. They don't want to change. And it just becomes that when you try and talk about sexism as a woman, you get, people think you're trying to be a victim and you're not. You're just trying to kind of bring awareness around something that is unfair.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I mean, that it happens so often, and it really is hard to explain as well. But you're putting it right. Like people will subconsciously use different words. I mean, that's just a
Yeah.
fact. And then some are better than others at being like, oh, you're right. Like maybe I wouldn't. Or like I see your point, but I still think my other point
Yeah.
stands. But it can be really difficult. Do you feel like you're in the company of good co-casters and people that you're working with though? Because that's one thing that was really important to me is that, I'm not the most outspoken about this stuff, but I will talk about it, and try and be in like a factual manner if it's brought up. But there are people in the scene that, have varying opinions, let's say, ranging from total disagreement to total agreement. And it always felt really nice to have a team with one of the people I could just trust, a team of 7 people and one person would always back me up, at least be like, hold on, like, let's hear the point. Do you feel like you have a community that really helps you move forward and deal with these types of issues?
I definitely do. I think a lot of people have been supportive of my casting and other women coming into the scene. And I think like most of the criticism that me or another woman gets has been based on technical ability. And I think just the World Cup like the community, as I would say, is the tier 2 scene. That's sort of like where I belong and where a lot of people know me. But then when I got to the World Cup, I was then exposed to a different community, being like maybe the more casual
Mm.
slash the more Overwatch League scene. And they are just not used to hearing a woman commentate because, like, Zoe does an amazing job as a host, but Overwatch League hasn't had a female commentator yet. So for me to be kind of one of the first females at World Cup for Overwatch was, I think, a huge deal. And I took a lot of criticism, a lot of hate. And I think that's like that tweet you mentioned was kind of me just like unleashing from all of that because there was just like a wave of sexism. But I think when it comes to like contenders community, they've been like really awesome and supportive about like upcoming casters because if you support the tier 2 scene, you're supporting like the dreams of players that haven't made it yet and people who are trying to prove what they're made of. And that's kind of like you're equally supporting casters who have the same dreams of proving themselves good enough to be in the Overwatch League. So when it comes to contenders, the community, I think they're awesome. They're a hardcore audience. They're really cool. But when it came to the Overwatch League audience, I think there's a lot more work that has to be done to expose them to more diversity, especially with how much diversity we've lost this year with talent being moved around. Overwatch League hasn't had their first female commentator yet, and like that's still a worrying thing to me. Of like, am I going to be able to like manage that wave of hate when I have to me or maybe someone else who knows who will move up or whatever? But someone has to pave the way for the Overwatch League audience, and that hasn't been done yet. So that's like a really scary thing to look forward to.
Yeah, it is always I mean, there's a reason that there's women only teams or women only sports, or that when we go to conventions we almost naturally gravitate towards other women in the
Yeah.
industry, like someone to latch onto and someone to tell us their experiences and someone to tell us that they can do it, and if they did it, you can do it too type stuff. So I mean, it's always nice to have those role models, but it's difficult because a lot of the role models in esports did naturally gravitate towards interviewers or desk hosts, stage hosts, that type thing. So to look towards a commentator can be difficult, and then to be the one who is the commentator is you are actually making a new path. I mean, it's a brighter future and it's nicer, but you're the one who has all the pressure on your shoulders. So that can be really tough. You said there's actually a lot of woman commentators in the NA scene.
Yeah.
So we said NA contenders.
Hmm.
Yeah, I had no idea how many are we talking?
So I know like me and Ham Tornado. So Ham Tornado is a
Mm,
color caster for Overwatch. She's been around as long as I have. I think she might be taking a break right now to go back to school. And then
mm.
this season we have Vicky Kitty, who came up from the FGC
Oh
community
yeah.
to help with Contenders North America. So at one point we had 3 females, or at least 1 female for every duo. So that was really cool. But now it's just me and Vicky, which is still fine because just not being the only one, and especially that Vicky is now going for play-by-play, and she has like a similar tone of voice as me. So it's just like really nice to just share that, like, well, if I get criticism, like she will too, or if she gets love, me too. And we just like share that adventure together. And of course, I did say like pave the way for Overwatch League, but of course, like just Zoe existing in Overwatch League and doing as great of work as she is, sort of is paving that way for women in general in the Overwatch League scene.
Mm-hmm.
But Overwatch has just been better for me just to feel more included. Like I've said that before, but Call of Duty, when I was casting it, I was the only female at the time. And that was when even female players were being like told they shouldn't even be competing. So Overwatch, like I tell people like who complain about Overwatch that it's just you have to experience other esports and other communities to know how truly good people have it in Overwatch. Although it's not perfect, it's been a good experience overall.
Yeah, as someone who's played Overwatch and otherwise as 1v1 for the most part, you know, it's nice not to have to worry. But when I did play Overwatch, there was a lot less joining team voice and having girl thrown in my face like a bunch of seagulls, which would happen in other like PUBG and stuff. So yeah, I actually think that Overwatch was I think there was a lot of things that went into it also appealing to a more wider audience. I've always been a big believer that art actually and the ability to make so much art about Overwatch has actually brought in a really big, like just a lot of women gravitate towards that. As someone who did grow up as an artist and had a lot of friends on Tumblr who were a lot of women and they instantly hooked on Overwatch, something that I always am jealous about because it is so nice. And Blizzard's also a very good company in terms of leading, paving the way for diversity and trying to be inclusive as much as you really can for people to be on team comms. But anyways, so you're at the tier 2 level, which for StarCraft people, these are not made up tiers. They're actually they literally have like tier 2 and then tier. So there's Overwatch League, which is the big leagues, the one that got transferred to YouTube and then is, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars. And then there's tier 2, which was fostered. It was actually like, as far as I remember it was a big deal. You know, they were like, yeah, we really want to foster our tier 2 scene. We want to have a way, path to pro for someone to get to in their dorm to like actual Overwatch League. And then this whole, you know, infrastructure got built around it. And that's where you have found yourself talking about your community. You kind of recently, it sounds like, in the grand scheme of things, especially compared to other people, recently got bumped to not just tier 2, but maybe a little bit ahead of the pack because of that World Cup gig where you worked with Jake, who was now one of the premier Overwatch League casters. Do you see a path forward to actually be the first woman Overwatch League caster, maybe in the next 2 years?
Yeah, and I think what's good about Blizzard is they've been in contact with me just throughout my whole journey, right? So I've been, you know, I already said I kind of send them a couple emails, you know, every now and then just to let them know I still want the job and just that I'm trying really hard and they would just tell me sort of they would give me feedback, right? And I think like after the World Cup, that was my first also big major LAN. Like Overwatch doesn't have LAN tournaments. Like I didn't do the showdowns. And after the showdowns, there really isn't any Overwatch LAN events. So that was my first Overwatch LAN. I was super nervous and I didn't cast like I usually do. And either way, I think it was still fine. But they just told me that they wanted to have me in Contenders, not only because like I'm a Contenders fangirl and I really love supporting that community, but also that I just need more time. I think I need more reps. I probably grow and improve slower than most people. Just with play-by-play and Overwatch, it's just really tricky. So I keep trying to refine the way I do things and take criticism from the community, you know, in pieces and try and become a better caster. And I just recently got a new co-caster. So being LegDay, we've only been casting for a few months together. So that also just reworking on that synergy with a new person and working out what works best for you guys. So I think one day I could be like, I don't want to jinx it, you know? So it's like, I'm definitely working towards getting to the Overwatch League. I've gotten feedback that I could get there. I think it's just getting more experience and I'm like rough around the edges, I guess is what people like to say about me is like, I'll sound really good, but I also have my flubs and my stutters and I'll say the same word over and over again. And I think one day, hopefully I can be that person who paves the way for me. Or if someone else wants to do it, that's cool. It just makes me coming in second place a little bit, maybe a smoother of a road, whatever it may be. But I think there is a clear path between starting casting and getting to the Premier League. Like I said, having open division, having trials and contenders just gives it a clear, quote, path to pro, just like the players have this way of, getting noticed, casters are using that as well. And I think we've seen like Jaws be able to move up from contenders to Owl. ZP and Hex started that way too. So I think there is a clear path. It's just up to me to work really hard this year to hopefully get in next year. But either way, I've told people that I'm not really like a destinations type of person. I'm more of like enjoying the journey, because I think some people get really stressed out if they just keep focusing on like, well, I got to get to Overwatch League. I got to pay the bills, like I kind of like to just enjoy what I'm doing right now and just pretend like this is my job and not to look too far ahead, because that's how you kind of bog yourself down and you start worrying about, well, why am I not there yet? Just enjoy where you're going and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, the more you look forward, the more likely you're going to trip over a rock on the way. So
yeah.
I mean, that's a really good mentality. It also sounds like Overwatch really has done a good job of actually providing a path. I think other esports get really murky, especially because a lot of other esports don't necessarily support their tier 2 scenes. Either they do in a prize pool way, but not, they won't do it in a organized fashion. So it sounds like a really good system there for Overwatch League. Well, I don't know if you caught me like making a weird face. I want to just clear, like when you said that you were a slower learner than some others, I was making a face because I had literally learned, like I'd watched your VOD with Uber, which by the way gave me the weirdest feeling, because I think we actually like have somewhat like similar tones and ways of casting. And when he was like critiquing you, I was like, oh God, the teacher's critiquing me.
Like, talking about me too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that was like 2018, I think, was when the YouTube upload was anyways. And then I listened to your Overwatch World Cup rather, casting. And I don't know, I thought that was pretty rapid improvement.
Thanks.
So I just want to make sure that was a positive, like, oh no, you're being too hard on yourself.
I mean, it's hard to see the big changes, right? You go from, I don't know, I came up from like not being able to make a coherent sentence to like, oh, like doing bad throws to my co-caster, or not being funny enough, or being too serious, or being too monotone. And I feel like I just have such a long way to go to like being at the spot that I want to be in my casting. Maybe that's being too overcritical, but it just feels like I only improved like some of the things I really wanted to, but I'm sure like, yeah, I'm just always hard on myself that, yeah, I probably came a long way, but I think I just, I feel like I'm only halfway to where I really want to be. And that's why it feels like maybe that's just a glass half empty type of mentality, but I have a long way to go still.
Do you think that that feeling of just not improving rapidly can come from, the lack of offline events for Overwatch League? Because you're right, there's none. Not Overwatch League.
Yeah. In general, Overwatch lands don't exist. And I think it's just a whole different environment that like I wasn't prepared for. Like I got to kind of warm up on Thursday where you're just like, I was just me and Jake in like a huge room with like no crowd or anything. So it was nice to like warm up. And then Friday we were on the side stage where people were like walking by, but not directly looking at us. So I didn't have that, weird stage fright or anything. And no one kind of paid attention to us. So it was kind of like casting at home, but people walk by you sometimes. So Friday was also chill. And then I got to Saturday where they just, arena with like hundreds of, I don't even know how many people are in that arena. And then, there's so many things to get used to in a LAN environment. The crowd noise. I definitely was like overly hyped because I just kept hearing the French crowd who was right below me during the France game just constantly yell at everything. And I was like, yeah, like I was thinking like I was like going in, and then turns out like what you sound like in an arena is way different than what you're sounding like online. So there's this whole aspect of LAN events that casters need to prepare for, like how to deal with crowd, and then you just like don't hear properly because the crowd is so loud, so like you're just all types of distracted, and how to do the whole production setup is completely different. And I think like that LAN environment is so important for a caster to truly prepare for the big time leagues, especially with the homestands and stuff. Like I think if I would have been offered Overwatch League, like I don't even think I would have been prepared, because I think World Cup was just a huge wake up call of like, LAN casting is so different than sitting at home in my blanket casting and just chilling. There's nobody looking at me. There's nothing going on. I don't have to wear pants at home, and like at LAN is just so different. So I forgot where the question was going with that, but yeah, just I think there definitely needs to be more Overwatch lance to prepare casters for the big time stuff.
Yeah, no, that was actually exactly my
Yeah,
question.
that's the one. I got
Yeah.
it.
Similar things in StarCraft, but it's actually even harder for you guys. I never thought of it that way, but yeah, at least we have like multiple offline lands. So yeah, it's really hard for you guys to get that type of practice, but it's also it's difficult for us too. Like not just in
Mhm.
terms of getting that experience offline, but also building a brand. There is something just a lot more magical about an offline land. There's always
Yeah.
almost always more prestige, especially if it's put on by the same publisher as the big leagues.
Yeah.
So it feels like you don't even get noticed, really. Like, you have thousands of fans who notice you online, but then you really feel like you're under the microscope when you're in an offline one. So, do you have any thoughts about how you've branded yourself and how much that has helped you and how much you need to develop and push a brand to continue your rise towards casters? So, like, not necessarily the technical side of things, but more just how you present yourself to the community.
Right. I think I really pushed for content this year because the whole reason I have such a passion for contenders is that I really relate to that journey of like not being quite good enough, but trying to prove that you are, right? As casters, at least in tier two casting, that's kind of like the gist of it. And you kind of relate to players who are in tier two, because there's no direct line from tier two Overwatch, contenders Overwatch to Overwatch League. It's not like if you win this, you go on to
Mm.
Overwatch League. It's like you are just trying to present yourself in the best way. And I relate to that a lot. So I've been trying to cover more stories about the players. I got a lot of people checking out my social media because I would post a lot of interviews with players because I kind of would message a lot of players before matches, just kind of trying to get to know them, get to know their story, because I think presenting the game is one thing to do, but then like on your downtime, I think it's really fun for me personally to present like what this match means to them, what they've been working on, what is happening behind closed doors, because you don't really get that as a viewer, you don't get that scope because a lot of these teams can't afford content teams, they can't afford editors, they don't know how to do content. So I was kind of that person who would go and interview a lot of the contenders teams, and I was the only one doing that for a while. So when I didn't get Contenders North America, which was the most popular region for contenders and maybe the best, the most scouted one. When I didn't get that, I was super disappointed, but I decided that after every Contenders North America match, I would message players and teams and do a post-match interview because I thought that that was missing, not only on the production side, but also in the community side. Like, no one got to know how these people felt after losing, after winning, and like what really happened. So after every match that I wasn't casting, I would go and jump into Discord calls, record like a 2-minute interview, and then post it on Twitter. And that got a lot of traction. And then a lot of people just knew me as, the chick that was obsessed with contenders and did interviews. And then I eventually got to Contenders North America, so I didn't really have time to do those interviews anymore. But I was just that person who did a lot of content for that. Also, when World Cup happened, I didn't get World Cup on like 2017 or whatever year it was. I actually don't remember. So I just took my own money, took my friend who knew cameras, and we just traveled to the group stage and did interviews live with the players. So this got me a cool experience. And I think that's how Blizzard really saw that, like, oh, well, she's investing her own money and her own time to like tell these players' stories. So this got me in their good books, and they were really impressed by that. And then the community really appreciated me covering that, because I think a lot of content creators stay away from Overwatch just because it doesn't get good viewership at all. I don't know why Overwatch content doesn't pop off unless it's like clickbait stuff, but whatever. But like analysis and
Uh,
interviews just don't pop off on YouTube. So I just did it because I liked it, and I was the only one who kept continuing that for a while. So I think content's really important for a caster's brand, to just either streaming, videos, whatever it be, just to when you're not casting, people have a reason to follow you.
mhm. I mean, sounds like you're delivering the stories of the contenders where it's probably missing from anywhere else, which is really good. We talk a lot about storytelling. Casting is really just storytelling. when you break it down. The actual nitty grittiness, especially in a very action packed game like Overwatch, is easy to get lost in. But the overall story, the Shanghai Dragons going 40 losses and then finally winning,
Yeah, that
anyone
was a big
tunes into
deal.
that, right?
Hmm.
Even the notoriety that some of these teams brought, also, creating keels and whatnot, is also very important. So sounds like you're really doing the community a service. But I've actually read similar things we were talking about, that apparently it's difficult to really provide Overwatch content or get rewarded, I should say, monetarily for it. So that's too bad. I wonder, not to make this like a thinking podcast, but I also wonder why that would be the case.
I think just a casual audience for Overwatch just only cares about trying to learn the game better. I think like someone said like 80% of the viewers in Overwatch are just like plat and below, which is, I don't know what that converts to in StarCraft ranking, but just like kind of okay / bad at the game. So
Yeah.
hardcore stuff like interviews, people don't really care about that, or analysis, people aren't good enough at the game to care about that. Like educational content pops off and like clickbait content pops off, but like nothing else, which is really weird because other esports have like really big content scenes that carry
Yeah.
them.
That's so
And yeah.
interesting. I'm thinking to a recent podcast I did where my a co-caster brought up that in StarCraft, when we started, almost everyone wanted to be a pro. Everyone wanted to be better at StarCraft because it seemed like it was almost still within reach. And then as time went on, it seemed like everyone just was like, you know what? No, we just want to watch good games. I wonder if that is a big reason as to why Overwatch, like everyone who plays it still feels like the ultimate goal is to get better, not to, you don't have as many people watching esports and being hardcore, where it's the opposite for StarCraft. We have a lot of hardcore people.
It's so weird.
Yeah, that is weird, but I mean, also understandable. You're a really big esport, so
Yeah.
it'd be harder to convert to a bunch of hardcore and actually get them looking on YouTube. But still interesting stuff. I also wonder how much YouTube having Overwatch League will also affect other people on YouTube's content.
Mm-hmm.
But this is going way off topic, so bringing it back to
Okay.
casting. So yeah, it feels like you're building like a really good brand. Do you and LegDay, who I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember like a lot of people actually saying he should have been brought up alongside
Jaws. Yeah.
Jaws. There we go, Jaws. I was pretty sure, but anyways,
Some body part.
yeah, exactly, just a shark, and that's yeah, but there was only so many slots, right? So he sounds like he's really good. I personally haven't listened to that broadcast yet between you guys, but do you work with him to build a brand as a duo, or are you still looking more towards your personal improvement?
I think we had a lot of plans this year to grow ourselves as a duo. Originally, Contenders North America and Europe was supposed to be in a studio in Germany.
Oh,
And then we actually got shipped right back because the quarantine happened where like US was not allowing people back in and stuff like that. So we only did like one broadcast or, a 1 week worth of broadcast in Germany before we had to go back to our own countries. And he's from UK and I'm here in the West Coast United States. So we have very different time zones. So it's actually really tricky to get on the same page about streams and stuff like that. He has his own stream and I pop in to kind of support him and hang out for a little bit. So people know us sort of together. But we had a lot of plans this year of just like being physically together to film all kinds of content. We had show ideas, we had stuff planned. And because of the quarantine, it's just like not as nice to do it online. Although I'd still want to do content with him, I think this quarantine stuff kind of like slowed everyone's brains down a little bit. Kind of like took I don't know, I've been in a weird work ethic, just like being stuck at home and waiting for the next cast. So I definitely still think we're going to do content together and grow our brands together. But we also have like way different things that we like to do. Like he likes to stream and do VOD reviews or watch parties with the Overwatch League stuff. And I like to do interviews and I like to do funny, I don't know, different types of stuff. So we're still like, we've only been co-casting together for a few months now. So we still have to kind of like narrow down on like one idea that would be good for both our personalities and what we like to do. But yeah, we're definitely going to try and grow our brand together this year. And hopefully, and I told LegDay that I would be the person that would bring him to Owl and I was going to help him deal with his issues and, criticisms he's had. And he's going to help me deal with mine. I was like, I will drag him to Owl, whether he likes it or not, to make sure we are both kicking butt. So yeah, hopefully that works out.
I mean, that's wholesome.
Yeah.
You know, we have a very supportive scene for our commentators in StarCraft 2, but we don't have pairings.
Oh, that's interesting. So you guys
Yeah.
rotate?
Yeah. So
Oh.
it's actually really funny. We are on the complete 180 right now. It is the expected thing in StarCraft among StarCraft fans, amongst people who used to watch StarCraft and moved on. You rotate. Caster pairings haven't
Wow. That's
really been a
hard.
thing. Well, I'm about to get your thoughts on it. But it hasn't really been a thing. Tastos is basically the only true casting pairing we have left. And when they go to offline events outside of Korea, they actually still rotate as well. So we even have an odd number of casters brought to events most of the time, so you can't even try to pair up. But anyways, so that's the way that we've done it, and you know we all really like each other, and it works. But you know, I've talked a lot about caster pairings because yeah, so much of the new esports seem to be just like, yeah, you should be in caster pairings. We're going to force you, or you need to get one because that's going to strengthen you as a caster and as a brand. So you know, now hearing that there is a different side of this in this weird esport called StarCraft, do you ever look at your other potential co-casters of NA contenders and say, man, I really wish I could have done this broadcast with them?
It's weird. I mean, I think Contenders North America, like this year has been all about development. Like before it was like putting on a show, and now it's like Overwatch League or Blizzard who are putting on this contender scene. They're more focused on like actually growing the next owl pair. Before, like I said, it was just like, hey, here's a tier 2 broadcast. So now they've swapped up all the duos. So the whole reason I got put with LegDay not was because I chose to, was because that Blizzard wanted to try us together, and especially that LegDay, his duo got yoinked to go to Owl. Jaws is now an Owl, so LegDay needed a partner. So maybe they just thought that me and my old partner, I don't know, we hit a ceiling. Maybe they just didn't like us together, or maybe they thought that, you know, I could enable LegDay and vice versa, and someone else could enable my old co-caster. Whatever it may be. Blizzard and Overwatch League seem really stuck on, you know, branding pairs together and, occasionally rotating around. You know, ZP and Hex got separated, and that was like this iconic duo in Overwatch League. And the question was, rotations. Would I want to cast with someone else? I would definitely like to just try different stuff. I think like Blizzard told us that after this season, if we didn't like our pairings or if we wanted to try something else, they would let us, we could propose to be with someone else. But they want us to stay together for like at least one season just to work out all the kinks and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think LegDay is sort of best case scenario for me for sure. Not only is his brand sort of as large as mine, I don't know, like large is a weird word to use. It's just a recognizable name. I would want someone to, you know, someone I can gel my brand with. And I think LegDay has done a ton of work for that. LegDay also channels sort of this European audience, and then I have a really strong North American audience. So we kind of like go together well there. I think like personality wise, we still have to figure each other out because like I don't really get British humor that much. And he's very, very British with his humor. And I'm very like meme-ish NA lol type of humor. So we still have like we need a lot of time to gel our personalities and the way we cast. But I think like the whole sticking as a duo is really important just to figure out throws as well. Like Overwatch, there's just like a lot of throws. I don't listen to that much StarCraft casting, so I don't know how complex it gets technical wise, but Overwatch, there's just so much going on and you just need to be on a beat. You know, there's such a flow to Overwatch that if you kind of miss a throw or you miss a beat, you're just like off tune the whole time. So it's really important to just figure that out with someone and just get used to their style and work out all the mistakes as a pair. When I was rotating casters a lot, they would just like not understand when I was finishing a sentence, or I wouldn't like the stuff that they were saying, or our personalities didn't match. Like they were too serious and I was too blah, you know? But so I like the rotations that you can kind of figure out what works. I definitely think like starting casters should cast with as many people as possible just to find, you know, you kiss as many frogs to find your prince or whatever, but in a less weird romantic sexual way. You do that as a caster, right? To find the one. Kind of like when you're finding a relationship, you just find the one.
You just go around kissing a bunch of people.
Yeah,
No,
right. But like casting with them, and then you find like the one, and then you can build that brand together. At least in Overwatch, like when casters are just known like as a duo, right? I don't think in Overwatch people really say they like this one caster. It's always like we like UberX, we like Jaws and Hex, we like this. it's always like a package. So yeah.
Oh, I can certainly see there are a lot of benefits even outside of particular esport pacing, but certainly with Overwatch, the way you guys have to turn on a dime between analysis and play-by-play is actually a bit whiplashy for me. But
Yeah, it's hard.
that would also go into the chemistry. I do think that online, we're talking about a very different ability to interact with people, which isn't, I could imagine being an issue because most of your stuff is online. So
Mhm.
when you're like paired up with this other person who's a professional, who's also really good, and you're just like, oh, I didn't really gel, I do wonder how much, it being online would really affect that. Because some of my best offline casts have been with X caster, and then some of my worst online casts
Oh
have been
no.
with X caster. Because, there's a delay to Australia or something, and I'm like, "Hubba, huh, you were going, no, I was, hup."
Oh my god, I feel that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But I do love the mobility that we have amongst our casters. And I also feel like it's helped me because I came in through the analysis, one of the respected ways, and StarCraft 2 in particular. You got to know your stuff, blah, blah, blah. So I eventually wanted to bring in a skill set of play by play and being the person who opened and closed the segments and the person who worked with the crowd. But if I'd never worked with half a dozen people, I don't know if I would have done that because, yeah, Blizzard would have been like, oh, you're an analysis guy. So go with this play by play person. And while that is fun, it's also, I don't know, I feel like I'm a better caster for it, but I can certainly see how being with the same person and having camaraderie and having to work towards a common goal, so you both are vested into improving, could also create a better caster for you. So it's really cool to get
I
different
definitely think, yeah, as
angles.
a duo, I think it also forces you to care about the other person because I imagine when I would rotate with people all the time, you're just so focused on your own performance. And like, if they suck, it doesn't matter, right? But when you're a packaged duo, now their success is just as important as your success because if someone sucks, they're dragging your entire product down.
Mm.
So I've definitely been stuck with like co-cast. Like I've rotated a lot of co-casters. Like I tried, like I was with Hurix for about a year and now I've been with LegDay for a few months. But before that, I was rotating co-casters every couple months just because like their work ethic would just slow down and I would have to go find someone else or they would just not improve as fast as I was. And I was already improving pretty slow according to my own terms. So when I say they were slow, they were just not improving at all. So you really just have to pick someone who matches so many things, so technical wise, and also your work ethic, which is the most important thing to me, at least. So,
Hmm. I mean, it's when you find your prince, as you said, then it can really
yeah, the kissing prince. Oh,
motivate
God.
you. Yeah. So I might have glossed over this a bit too much for the listeners. So you identify as a play-by-play caster, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then your co-casters have all been identified as analysis. I already touched on it a bit in the earlier section about how it is even a further step forward for women to be a play-by-play caster through and through. And really, with Overwatch, you are kind of designated, whereas with other esports, you can definitely be more of a mixed bag. So did you start off? You said you started off with an like analysis back when you were first getting into it, but when you were starting to rise through the ranks and get to contenders, had you like labeled yourself as play by play when you send in those demo reels, when you made those emails, you're like, hey, I'm a play by play caster.
Yeah, at the start, I definitely had I think a lot of us were trying to figure out the interpretation of Overwatch casting, right? Because there's
Mm.
so much going on, and it's really hard to keep the ebb and flow of things. So originally, I was trying to do hybrid casting with one of my first Overwatch co-casters, where we wanted to switch between play by play and color, just kind of like whatever happened at the moment is what you would cover. Didn't work out. That was very hard to do. So would not recommend hybrid casting for Overwatch. Now it's very definitely like, I don't know how other games are with having that designated person, but Overwatch, there's always going to be that person who talks during the fight, who is the play by play, and always the one who talks after the fight, which is the color caster or the analyst. And I quickly figured out that I just wasn't at a grandmaster or high level player in Overwatch. And I think I've met a lot of people who just were so clearly outclassing me in the knowledge of the game. And I definitely bring some knowledge and all that, but I think there's just a higher level of micro stuff that I'm not able to notice. But what I thought I was different at was bringing energy and just, I genuinely am easily impressed by a lot of things. I'm that person who's like so super touristy. Whenever I go to a new place, I'm taking pictures and I'm really fascinated by everything. So I think like as a play-by-play, I'm easily able to just be genuinely like, wow, that was really cool, and just generally sound like this is cool and this is interesting and people should care. So that worked out for me as play-by-play to just brand myself as that. And then I just stuck to that. I did at one point think about going a color caster route just because I thought it was bigger in demand. I thought maybe as a woman I wouldn't also fit the play-by-play role, or maybe that was going to be too hard for me to be successful in, because maybe a louder man would be like, maybe that I could compliment someone better that way. If, you know, if I have issues getting loud and have vocal range, maybe I should go color. But eventually I figured out that, you know, casting with former players are coming in as casters and they want to be color casters. So now I kind of figured out that, well, there actually is a demand for both color and play-by-play casters. So when I would send emails, I would definitely tell them I'm play-by-play. And if I've had people I've kind of accidentally, you know, mentioned that I'm a caster and not specifically the role, because I kind of assume when I'm sending my reel and people know me that they know what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And then people will be like, oh, so you're a color caster. And I'm like, not going to take that the wrong way, but no, I'm not a color caster because I'm a girl. I am in fact play-by-play and I'm the loud one, and they would try and force me onto color. But I think the issue with Overwatch is that you can't really just flex onto both. You can't just like rotate roles, because it's just very difficult to master either one. Just like you said, there's such a lot of action going on, and there's very specific timing with play-by-play and very specific timing for color to get used to. So yeah, I just stuck to play-by-play, and I kind of refuse anyone who asks me to do color, because I'm not gonna, you know, take a job I don't know how to do. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine that also does help your branding even further.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it might actually be like the really right move. Has your, you keep talking about demo reel. Can you specify what you mean by demo reel?
So yeah, or at least casters should have these, or any host would have this too. I mean, anything in a broadcast, you submit a resume, which usually has the list of events you're doing. But I think not all of us have this like glorious long like Santa Claus list of events that we do. You know, like I just do contenders every year, which is a huge deal, but it's one thing on your resume. I think the best way to show yourself is to have a demo reel, which around, you know, 3 minutes long, give or take. You have a YouTube video or some video that shows a demo of what you're made of, and usually it's your best moments. So if you're play-by-play, it's all your hype stuff. It's maybe you want to flex a little bit, like, hey, I did grand finals. I know my demo reel has like a grand final here or there, not because it's good, but it's because the fact I got grand finals. So anyway, however you want to design your demo reel, I know for play-by-play, you want to include all your hype moments and all your best moments. And color casters, my friends usually include just their biggest brain moments. So like they'll try and at least in Overwatch, you like say something's going to happen and then it happens. That's like the most satisfying galaxy brain move to do, is to predict something and it happening and then have it in your demo reel. But yeah, I don't apply to anything. Honestly, I don't even send resumes that often. I almost send my demo reel because it's something almost better, more digestible and more interesting than reading a resume that doesn't actually say how good you are. It just says what you've done.
Mm-hmm. So
super important for people to get that.
Yeah, it's like art. I mean, you can say you graduated from X university, but if you show them your portfolio and it sucks, they're going to be like, well, it's not what we signed up for when you read your resume.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like, so I just wanted to like make sure we're on the right page for demo reel. I do one for this, I have a voice acting side gig, but
oh, nice.
Never done one for broadcasting. There was so much word of mouth in StarCraft, being brought up by just doing a heck of a lot of shit online and talking to the right people and then being like, hey, actually, you're pretty good. I'll suggest you next time, was the way to go. So actually, I only know one person who was a demo reel in StarCraft, and it's because he wanted to branch out to other events. Otherwise, you keep talking about that you sent emails to people at Blizzard and demo reels to people, and it's like, first of all, just commendable. Like in general, it is really awesome to hear that you do that just as a person, even, second to that, like as a woman, because typically it's a lot harder to push women to like be like, yes, I am good, please look at me. And then in esports, where it feels like it is so much more of like, oh, you just have to work really hard and hope someone notices you. But you were totally right earlier, like they're not, their job is not to actually usually go find people, it's to pick of the people they do know that are good. So
Mhm.
it is really important for you. But yeah, I don't have a demo reel. But I've
And it's
thought
fun.
about
Like
doing one.
you guys probably all know each other for so long that you guys just know who to recommend and who's good.
Yeah.
But I just like I assume like I'm sure people do know me and I wouldn't have to send like a demo reel. But I also think of like maybe the super higher ups just don't listen to contenders or don't listen to the stuff that you do. And I'm sure like because you're in the big leagues that, the higher ups have seen you. I just like to assume the opposite coming from COD, that I've just always waited for a phone call and it's never happened. That I just assume that people have never heard of me. So I just give the whole introduction, right? Like,
Yeah.
here's my gamer name, real name. This is what I do, resume thing. And I just pretend like they don't know me because sometimes that is the case. Like I said, like some people just like are so unaware of what happens in other parts of their esport that at least now they have their full introduction. So if like maybe my friend, like maybe I have a contact at Blizzard that I send stuff to, but maybe the people that they have to forward this to don't know me at all.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just I'm in a different situation where I'm still working my way up, So
I mean, it is odd. I guess you're right, but it's just I would never describe StarCraft
yeah, you're
in
lucky, man.
the big leagues or whatever.
I
But
hate doing demo reel.
yeah, no, that's one of the like I have saved stuff that I would put in a demo reel, but I have not gone back to it and like edited it. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's something that I still think is actually a good idea. I think you are in the right. For anyone out there, even in the smallest esport, I think it's good, especially just because in case you ever want to branch out, in case you ever need $100 and you want to cast mobile
Yeah.
games, like it's still really important to have. We are more and more entertainers, presenters, pseudo actors on this camera. So to have a demo reel is really important. I saw you tweet about you actually going into a couple of other esports recently. Is this a direct move or just kind of like a circumstance it came up, so I'm going to cast it?
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. This year has been a little bit worrying, with the quarantine and
Hmm.
stuff. And I've always been that caster who invested like 120% into one game. I know some people like to balance multiple games. And just Overwatch, I was starting to get a little bit concerned with how things were going. And I just wanted to maybe go from all my eggs in one basket to maybe taking like one or two eggs out, just in case, because I didn't want to get into a point where I would just be like absolutely devastated and like careerless if Overwatch were to implode tomorrow, which I'm not hinting that it is, but because that really sounded dark there for a second. But yeah, I just wanted to try other games. I've done Overwatch for so many years and only Overwatch, only watch Overwatch, only study Overwatch, that I just wanted to see like how bad would I be at casting something else. So I tried Rocket League because I'm a play-by-play, so I'm like, oh, I'll just ease right on in. I've watched sports once or twice. I'll figure this out. And
Mhm.
I kind of butchered it, but I got good feedback. I only butchered it because I just didn't know the terms. I would say
Right.
like the bar, and it was like crossbar. I would say a little tap tap taparoo, and it was like a special touch move. And I didn't know the technicals, but it was really fun for Rocket League. And then Warzone, kind of going back to some Call of Duty roots just to see how it was like, and it was really fun. And I think it just gave me an idea of, oh, well, maybe I wouldn't do so bad doing something else. And maybe it wouldn't be the end of the world if Overwatch were to just like die tomorrow, which again, not saying it would, but just to keep one or two eggs out so my life wouldn't absolutely end if something happened, or if the quarantine thing gets a little worse for esports. But
Mhm.
I definitely want to stick to Overwatch just because that's where my brand is. That's where all my work is. And that's kind of what I know best. But because I only got those other gigs because I was doing an Overwatch thing, and then the production company really liked me, so they just filled me for all these other spots that they needed casters for. So it was kind of lucky but unlucky that I just kind of got thrown into other stuff. But hey, it's paycheck. It's pretty awesome, and I had a lot of fun doing it.
It's good experience as well. I think it's actually really useful to delve into other pacings and styles and
Yeah.
scenes. Personally, I haven't done it
And
too much, but
how different other games are to cast too.
Mhm.
just like every game requires like a completely different set of casting style. Like Warzone is so chill. I casted for 7 hours straight and it was just like felt like talking to a stream. While I was Overwatch, I feel like my brain's going 100 miles an hour trying to analyze everything.
Right.
And Rocket League, it was just chill again. It's really cool to see how hard and easy or how different casting different games are.
Well, Overwatch is kind of on crack, like, constantly.
Yeah,
So
actually.
I think you're actually the hardest esport to cast. So as someone who did it, like, basically 5 times, I think is how much I've casted Overwatch. But yeah, it seems really difficult. So, but it is actually really like, whenever I feel the urge to try a new esport, first of all, I just don't try that many games. You know, I'm a single player and StarCraft type of person for the most part. So, and I never want to go into an esport. And yeah, like, not know the technical terms, but it is odd because I have also really deeply respected people who do go into other esports. For instance, Rainbow Six recently had a bit of controversy where Anna was their
Oh.
host. Anna Prosser was the host instead of this guy that was brought up, and he was really good, but they chose her, and I don't fully know. But anyways, she wasn't a Rainbow Six person,
Mm-hmm.
but she has obviously years of experience being a presenter and bringing a skill set, the basic technical skill set that many people who just come up through being passionate about their individual esport might not have. So initially there's blowback, but then I watch them personally and I'm like, oh no, that's actually a really good job. Okay. They didn't know that guy's name for a second, but they learned it and they never messed up again.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about ever going into other esports, do you recognize the skill set that you're bringing over? Do you ever consider, again, reaching out to other people with your demo reel and being like, hey, I know I don't do your esport and I don't want to come off as just, thinking I deserve this, but I think I could actually bring a skill set to you.
Yeah, it's tough because I think like I bring different stuff to the table. Like I've done hosting, I've done interviewing, I've done content, I've done casting. So if I were to ever go to another esport, yeah, I definitely would have to dive into just going back to the drawing board of just casting scrims or casting casual stuff and making a demo reel specifically for that game. I don't think it makes sense for me to go to a game and be like, here's my Overwatch reel. I could probably say, like, here's my demo reel for your game. I know it's not much, but here's like the success I had in this game. And I really want to just bring that passion and, my work ethic to your game. And I'd appreciate the opportunity to learn more or something. It would be sort of tricky to convert that skill set because I feel like it's comparing apples to oranges. Although you're doing the same job, which is commentating in 2 separate games, like I said before, the style is completely different. The knowledge is absolutely not transferable. What you know about Overwatch means nothing about to something else. Like maybe like you bring your knowledge of FPS shooters, so maybe you're really good at fast-paced games and you can sort of try and BS your way of, hey, I really like FPS and I think I'd do great in Halo casting or something. Like I just think it would be really hard to convince someone to transfer. I don't think the skills are that transferable. I think you'd have to really start from scratch because like things like branding are just stuff that won't carry over unless you just have an audience that likes a lot of esports. But usually my audience or brands that I've seen have this hardcore audience that follows them that don't really care for other esports. So I think like if you were to change games, you're kind of starting from scratch a little bit, besides maybe bring obviously your social media followers. But that's why I don't want to change games because I feel like I'd have to just learn everything over again.
Yeah. There are cases of people transferring over, or in the case of can't remember her name right now. She does Dota international stuff. She was a reporter who kind of just got a miscellaneous job to cover this Dota thing years and years ago, and people loved her so much for her genuine interest in it. Because she didn't come in like a regular news reporter, it was 2013, and be all snobby. She was actually really interested that she's been doing the international for the last 7 years, something like that. Can't
Oh,
remember her name,
wow.
though. Can't remember her name.
It's not like Renessa, is it?
No, that doesn't sound right. I want to say
Okay.
Casey, but I'm just like, oh, not
Oh,
sure.
okay. I
Not
don't
sure.
know.
Anywho, there are cases of people having no knowledge and
Yeah.
just actually being very charismatic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's also some debate as to whether or not what's easier to transfer skills of too. Like, for instance, is hosting X esport really that different from hosting Y esport? Where, of
Oh
course,
yeah, that's
analyzing,
easy.
yeah, analyzing between the two would be like extremely different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and play by play would actually probably also kind of get a little bit of a pass in some
Mm-hmm.
regards. But I'm always worried about feeling like the big kid who's stomping all over everyone's daisies, you know, like a up and coming
Yeah.
esport who's like, we're looking for some experienced casters. You want to try? And I'm like, yep, I know everything. Also, you know, fuck that one guy who was like working on this for 3 years. He doesn't get that job anymore. Like,
Oh yeah, like feeling like that. I feel like Overwatch has done that more of just
oh,
pulling people from other games. And that's been weird, right?
mm-hmm,
Because there's definitely been that sense of when you have these casters from other games come in over people who have been, because we have a developing caster scene. There's definitely been, the new casters that have been like, who are these guys and why didn't I get the job? You got someone who came in who doesn't know the game who's getting my job. There's
right.
definitely that like, little tension there. And I'm definitely on the side of like, I think I understand why you're pulling brands from other games because you want to bring the attention from those other games.
Mm-hmm.
When Overwatch League brought in Semler, that brought that big CS:GO audience and whatnot. I definitely understand like picking brands from other games just to kind of enhance and supplement your own audience. But I definitely think like you want to also reward your own casting community and at least help develop them or tell them why they're not getting picked or what they have to improve on. So I like going to another game is definitely scary, especially like a game like Rainbow Six and other ones that were really gatekeepy towards new talent.
Mm-hmm.
So I can definitely see how that can be intimidating.
I kind of forgot for a second that happened to Overwatch League. I was more honed in on the
Yeah.
T2 thing. And obviously now they've brought up more people who were pure Overwatch, but yeah, that was a big
Hmm.
deal. And not to say anything controversial, but Semler and Hex were often criticized. I guess is the best way to put it. Semler has a pacing to his casting that is ideal for CS:GO, but maybe
Yeah, it's
not
the
for
issue of like
Overwatch.
your style can't always translate to different games. Like people
Yeah.
thought he's so amazing and godlike in CS:GO. We can just take him and he'll be that in Overwatch. And like that's
Mm-hmm.
not going to be the case. So
Yeah, and that's very true. Sometimes you are just actually, even if as willing as you are to go to different things, like you were actually just, you were born to do this one thing, man. Like you better be really good at it. Anyway, so on a more technical side of casting, for the last bit of this podcast, you did a VOD review with Uber, or Uber did a VOD review with you, but either way,
Mhm.
which was really cool. Uber, one of the best play-by-play casters of any esport, really. StarCraft guys all love them, and it was really interesting to see that because I've never really seen too many people openly critique other casters. If someone told me to do it, I'd feel like an ass. I feel like, oh, I'm not nearly
Yeah.
accomplished enough to do this, but I don't think that at all for Uber. Getting that VOD review and getting the critique of other professionals and casters or players, whoever you talk to, what are some of the things that they've taught you that really stuck with you, or that you've really honed in on and tried to improve?
It's so hard because I've done VOD reviews with so many people. And
Mm-hmm.
Uber actually had a lot of nice things to say about me. So he was actually not really that critical of me. I think what he taught me was how to flow the energy or how to ramp up the energy because I think sometimes Overwatch has things that happen that you're just an ultimate can either be 0 or 100, there's no like middle ground. It either does absolutely nothing or it absolutely slams the other team. So it's really hard to figure out because Overwatch is all about trying to predict what's going to happen and then preparing for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it takes so much brain energy to do it. And then if you're able to know what's going to happen before it happens, and you need to like ramp up the energy to do it. And he really taught me about the art of doing that, of really starting the fight out low and really knowing when to ramp it up as something's happening, when to go to 70%, when to go to 100%. Because a lot of my issues or my criticisms, I guess, have been about where to sit my energy at, as like your first fight doesn't matter, or like this fight matters because there's this much time left, and oh, it's the end of the map, so you need to be at this level of energy. And I like still to this day, after several years of casting Overwatch, I'm still trying to figure out where energy needs to be at, because, you know, you don't want to go over the board where you're just at 100% every time, because now you're not conveying to the audience what really is important when every fight seems hype. Like, you need to kind of pick your moments. And I think that's what a lot of OWL casters, when I did VOD reviews with them, really taught me. A second thing is also not to listen to VOD reviews. It was like the weirdest thing, because I learned so much from VOD reviews, but then I also learned not to listen to VOD reviews, because at this point of my casting, I'm not doing, like, this is gonna sound head ass, but I want follow me through here. I'm not doing anything wrong. Everything that someone says that they don't like about you, it's really not a technical thing, but more of a preference thing. Like, if you look at two paintings and you're like, well, I like this one and this one is shit, that's not really, you know, that wasn't painted well and this was. It's more the fact that you like the colors of this and you like the style of this, but this one doesn't appeal to you. And it's obviously, if I were to drew like a stick man versus like Mona Lisa, obviously you're going to be like, okay, that's not on the same level as this. But at this point in my career, when people are criticizing me, it's also about their preference of style. So like, I like really short handoffs. I like kind of going all over the place. I like being goofy. I like talking about this particular thing in a fight. And if someone comes up in my VOD review and is like, you should not be talking about their positioning, you should be talking about this ult economy. And it's like, there's many things you can talk about in Overwatch. And if someone is saying you should not be doing this, like, unless it's blatantly obvious, now it comes up to style. So it's like, I got a lot of criticism of like, you should really exclaim the first kill of a fight. And then I've gotten the same feedback of, you are being too hype. Oh, you should really elongate the sentences you're saying because you're too short, or you're talking too short. And oh, I really like the you know, the way you guys go back and forth. I've literally gotten criticism and then the opposite of like, hey, I like what you're doing. And there's just really up to preference of what people like. And at some point, once you get the technicals down, like, you know what you're throwing, you're not monotone, you're hype at the right moments, you know what you're talking about. At this point, it's just like you developing a style that you like to do and fits your personality and what the game means. As long as you're presenting the right story, the right information for your audience, hardcore or casual. It's important also not to get bogged down by too many VOD reviews or what people say, because then you start kind of becoming a crowd pleaser. You're trying to become a people pleaser, and then you get really mentally exhausted trying to chase pleasing after everyone, when really you should be trying to find what you like. And once you get that confidence of knowing what you think sounds good, then you don't have to chase VOD reviews as much. I think VOD reviews are maybe more for the beginner and sort of growing casters, but once you get to a good level, it's really just about building your own confidence in yourself.
That's a good way to sum it up. That's one thing I did think of when I was watching the VOD review. I was like, damn, these are like really specific things, like, and not necessarily
it's
correct.
Like nitpicky. That not all viewers are going to notice too, because it's also a caster giving you that feedback, and what they see in a cast is not what a viewer is going to see. Like, oh, I didn't like the way you said there is instead of that is, you know, like Uber likes to also pick away at your English, which I have dog shit English. So he'll pick away at your English, and that's something like a viewer might not even care or notice. So
yeah,
there's also just taking feedback from certain people with a grain of salt, because, you know, you're casting for the viewers and not for other casters. So it's weird how to digest feedback, right?
Yeah, I think it's definitely more important to look at it more like tackling a very large, vague problem. You know, as opposed to being like, yeah, you really should have ramped it up faster here. More like, okay, so do you think the action was going to go on for a very long time or not? Where was your headspace at? Because I think that's like, you're not going to remember in a moment what some guy was like, ramp up faster. You're not going to remember that at the moment, but
yeah,
like bigger, larger things, how to attack a story, how to attack an engagement are going to be, I don't know, they're more workable for me anyways. So I definitely get your point. It's funny, but you're right. Like VOD reviews
there's
are
like
a bit
trends,
shit.
obviously. Like,
Sure.
I'm not saying like, oh, don't ever listen to VOD reviews, because that made me sound like a huge idiot there. It's just like, listen to the trends of what people saying. If many VOD reviews from different people are saying you are too boring and you're not hype, don't just listen to yourself and be like, I'm doing great. Like, clearly, if a lot of people are saying the same thing, you should start listening to that. But the nitpicky stuff, like, oh, you should have talked about this, or oh, you should have ramped it up a little bit more here. Like, don't listen to the nitpicky stuff. Just like listen to the general, like, huge flaws that are coming up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If everyone says you're an asshole, you're probably an asshole. But if
Yeah,
one person,
it's probably a you thing.
yeah, exactly. And that goes for, I don't know if you agree with this, but that goes for like general feedback as well from the public, which can be very
Hmm.
questionable. They often don't know what perspective you're giving the commentary for, or how you're working with your co-caster, or what the producer would want, and all that good stuff. But if everyone says you are monotone, then yes, maybe you should
Yeah.
listen. Seems to be the good way to do it. So do you do any of your own self-analysis? Do you watch your VODs right after you're done casting them?
Not by myself. I just like really can't stand my own voice, so I need someone to like go through that pain with me. So
Right.
I did force LegDay a few times to look over casts with me. I have a good friend Mushu Beef who was founded the whole broadcast GG and literally has been there for me since I started casting. He's been done doing more VOD reviews with me recently, and I've liked doing that with colleagues who have just known my casting style for a long time and just can kind of help me tweak things here and there. And I've kind of done some with owl casters too, just to get the perspective of like, well, do they know, like maybe they know what Blizzard wants, right? Because like what the viewers like and what Blizzard wants, or what, you know, your Big Poppy wants, like it's kind of different, you know? Like
Yeah.
you're not, there's certain things like, oh, don't be too hype, or don't go rap god, even though going rap god super hype is really like viewers love that shit. But not so much for the casual audience slash Blizzard don't like rap god loud persons. So but to answer your question, yeah, I don't do it by myself because I feel like I get really self-critical and I kind of get really depresso espresso about like, oh my god, that was so horrible. Oh my god, oh why did I say that? And then I just like I get out of the window, I close it out. But to have someone who kind of like levels my head of like they give me that second opinion of just what it actually sounded like. I don't know if I just sound different in my own ears, but having someone there who kind of affirms or just confirms or denies what I'm thinking is super important because I get really indecisive about what I actually think about stuff. So,
Well, you do literally sound different in your ears, so you're not crazy.
wow, today I learned.
Yeah, it's actually how much bass you hear in your own head versus how much you would hear on a recording, for instance. It's all about the bass, actually. So I actually sound
Oh,
very bassy now that I have like my headset on as well. But I know I'm probably closer to you, actually, as I hear you.
oh okay.
But anyways, mechanics of that aside, that is often why people are like either surprised or don't like their own voice. I get what you mean just in general. I also don't. I have to like edit this podcast and
Oh,
I'm
okay.
always like, just get it started. Like it'll be fine. Anywho, so you mentioned actually learning how to control your voice to help with some of those like moments, because
Yeah.
that's certainly what I was afraid of doing as well. I think I had a good cadence to play by play, decent, but I was not the greatest at controlling my voice. I've done voice lessons and voice acting and all that stuff since then, and very rarely do I lose control of my voice. But when I do, I get really angry at myself. But what did you do anything specific, or was it more just like a learned process through doing so much casting?
I definitely started with which you're probably an expert on this, so I'm gonna try and talk about the noob stuff that I learned. But I started obviously with breathing with my lungs,
Hmm.
having proper breathing exercises and just like stretching out my lungs because like as play by play, I was just needing to expend a lot of air, so I would just
Hmm.
do the stretches, and that actually helped me a lot, not have to take as many breaths during my play by play. So that was an okay start for the actual like vocal range. I'm still not really great at this, but I have like my music friends who teach me about like where my voice is located, so just like I don't want this to like start breaking down into a lesson because I actually have no idea what I'm talking about, but like just like feeling where my voice is coming from. Was it like from my chest, is it from my throat, or is it higher up in my face, or some sounding like that? Because people were noticing, at least like music people, your audio files were noticing that when I got hyped, sometimes it sounded like I was tensing up my throat, and they could hear it. So obviously, if you hear it, that's pretty bad. So they would try and teach me to let that go, and just because I think I was holding back volume wise, because one, I'm in like a house and I don't know what my mic, can hold if it's
Yeah.
like peaking or whatever. So I always feel like I can't go all, like, my 130% volume. So I was like holding my volume back, which forced me to kind of like strain my throat a little bit. So I've been trying to learn sort of that healthy casting of not using the throat as much and trying to do more chest casting or whatever. This also just, I know it's not whatever, it's really important knowledge. I just still don't fully understand it. And just talking from my chest also kind of like lowers that range a little bit. What else? I know for like voice acting, like I've done a few voiceovers, not voice acting, voiceovers where, you know, you try and talk with a smile because you just sound like so much happier. And so shit like that. So I've learned like little bits here and there from really good music friends of mine that are teaching me stuff. I'm still really an unhealthy caster because I don't use like my diaphragm, or I'm not pushing the air right with my stomach, and I use a lot of my throat to use voice, so I actually hurt my throat a lot. So I'm still learning all that, but I think mainly for me to just lower my range so I can start a fight out lower, just so I have more range to go higher, I think has been really big for me. And also that when I do want to use volume, I'm trying to push air out properly through my diaphragm, or the right term. Sorry if I'm messing it up, music people, but like just pushing the air out properly so I'm not using my vocal cords. I'm rather using my chesty westy thing to push out sound. That all sounded super head ass, but you guys know what I mean. So I don't mess up my throat. I'm still learning, but obviously I have a long way to go with that.
I mean, technically explaining might be a bit more difficult, but you definitely have the right idea. Yeah, some of the first things that I learned as well. I remember like 6 years ago, back when me and my friend were still fans, you know, not really broadcasters. 7 or 8 years ago at this point, Jesus.
Oh,
Anyways,
wow.
we were at a party, and my friend Fear Dragon went up to a very famous commentator named Tasteless, who he was like, Tasteless, I'm a really big fan. Like, can you teach me? And Tasteless is really well known for his deep voice and his GGs and his hype casting. And Fear's like, can you give me like, you know, just like one thing to help me like right now? And Tasteless was like, all right, like here's the thing. And he puts one hand on his shoulder and one hand on his stomach. And Fear Dragon looks over at me and he makes that like, I'm being touched by a celebrity look. And Tasteless proceeds to tell him how to breathe. He actually put the hand on the stomach to focus on what you're talking about, the diaphragm being used as opposed to using your throat. So hey, you're talking about all the right things.
Okay, yeah, because I said diaphragm, then my music friend's like, well, you can't actually control your diaphragm. It's actually this. So I don't know all the technical stuff. I'm really bad at just remembering to use that, because I know like music people, anyone who plays instruments or sings for a living just automatically breathes using their diaphragm, and I'm just doing whatever because Overwatch is so like in the moment that I don't have time to focus on the way I'm breathing. I have to look at who is using stuff and who's pressing buttons. So
yeah,
if I did a slower game, I'd probably have more mental power left to focus on stuff like that, but because I just never was into music, I don't have that registered automatically. So
I did not like music. I played the flute. It was terrible.
Oh,
that talking
one
about
more
breathing,
instrument
man.
than I did.
Oh, well, maybe I
which
should
is
have a head
0.
start. And one of the other things is like, do you find a big difference in standing versus sitting?
Probably not. I mean,
you can answer no.
I think I mean, it's probably like energy wise. Like I'm a little bit comfortable when I'm like, I'm sure there's a difference with like, you know, stretching your throat and the lungs expanded and like all this stuff sitting, and like, oh, you should actually like stand and stuff. And like, I've casted like curled up in a ball. I've done a lot of things. Obviously I probably have more air to give standing up, but I like standing up just because I feel more awake. There's probably some lung and technical stuff that's better about, you know, sitting up and having your throat stretched out and speaking upwards instead of downwards and all this stuff. But I personally don't notice, but I actually am not a music freak, so I don't actually know the difference, or I don't notice it.
Oh yeah, I don't think it's very noticeable when you listen to a broadcast, but I think it helps give confidence. You literally start to like even get a better posture. Better posture actually also helps how you breathe and how you sing and how you cast, but that's really working on it. But yeah, you have to stick your chest out proud. And yeah, I always stand, but there's plenty of people who are very, very good commentators. Actually, most of the CSGO commentators, because we got to cast right we could look at each other. they all sat, and they're all pretty respected casters. So there's usually not a huge difference, but I
Mhm.
think it can help. So, yeah, you actually you brought up being able to cast, in a curled ball, and I'm like, one of my infamous moments is casting drunk on the floor,
Oh
blind.
no.
So
What?
yeah, it's possible.
That's sick.
Called it all correctly too.
Nice.
Yeah,
I
right.
did that once. I had a BlizzCon party. The Toronto Defiant were doing a BlizzCon party,
Oh,
and they wanted to have an Overwatch tournament going on at the same time that
wait a
everyone was
minute.
super
Wait a
pissed
minute.
drunk.
Was this the most recent BlizzCon?
Wait, no, it was the one before that.
Okay, okay. Because the most recent BlizzCon, Huck came over and
Oh yeah, so yeah, one BlizzCon party they had me casting, but I was solo casting, which I didn't even know I was solo casting. I should definitely try and ask more often if I have a co-caster because apparently that's not standard to have two. Either way, and I was like, yeah, I'll take $50 and like a few drink tickets. But my issue was that those drink tickets were spent like during the cast, so I was just like chilling there, sipping. And the worst part is I did cranberry vodkas, which were like the worst idea possible. So I like hurt the crap out of my throat because I was
yeah.
trying to be hype while also having a buzz while also drinking alcohol, which is the worst mix ever. But it was one of my favorite moments because it was a Toronto Defiant party. So obviously there was like Overwatch League people around me, but I was in cosplay. So no one recognized me. So it was actually super sick. No one knew who I was because I just like had this wig on and all this shit. And then, but Puckett knew, I don't know if you know who Puckett is, but Puckett was just like, hey. And he was like, I think he was drunk. I don't know. I can't confirm or deny. I don't know how many he had, but like, Puckett would come up and then all these like drunk Overwatch League people and players would come up, be like, ah! And then it was just like a really good time. But yeah, to talk about drinking and casting is not a good mix. That was my story about that.
You're absolutely right. You're not supposed to drink coffee, anything with milk in it, anything too hot or too cold. Carbonation's also, oh my God, the list goes on. I do not
Oh,
adhere to
yeah.
those rules. Well, I
We
probably
probably
should.
should because we'd be healthier, but we'll survive for now.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyways. One last question here actually comes from my Patreon supporters.
Oh.
Yeah, fancy. Yeah, Ranish asks, what is the most important thing a production team can do to help you do your job?
Honestly, it's really underrated, but not fucking up is just a huge deal because I personally take on just a lot of stress and anxiety already in a cast, and having technical issues just like bogs me down so much. Like if a feed bugs out, if there's, I don't know, like I do a lot of online casting. So if there's something wrong with the feed, if you're hot micing me, which means turning on my mic when I'm not actually live, that's really the worst thing you can do with a caster. And over communicating. I know some producers like they're always in your ear, and
Yeah.
that's I personally mentally will explode if I have too many voices in my ear. So I guess like number one is just like if you do your job, I can do mine. And if you introduce technical problems, like casters just get distracted from doing their job and they get stressed and they get maybe a little bit pissed because it's a really stressful environment and we're all trying to make a really perfect product, and casters are doing their part, so they really expect the same work ethic and the same perfection from the producers. So I know I'm always happy when producers just do their job, do it amazingly, and do what they're supposed to do. I know with Overwatch comes like a whole new set of things, like how good your observing is, because I know Overwatch could be really like tricky, and your observing is the product you are showing. So if the Overwatch observing is bad, kind of the whole product ends up being bad. So you got to make sure that you're really good at observing. And producers, like if you want to go that, I guess like maybe he or she, they're asking about going that step beyond. And I think that's definitely like sitting down with your casters and just asking them like communication styles. I always like asking that my producers of like, what do you like to tell me in my ear? Or like asking your casters, what do they want to hear in their ear? Is it like you want to hear every time there's a transition? Do you want to hear every time you're on camera? Do you want to hear every time we see something cool and like, oh, you missed that cool pulse bomb? Like, I know some people really like to have as much information as possible. I really don't like anyone talking when I talk because I mentally explode. But I think like it's been really cool if producers go that step beyond of asking me what makes me comfortable and what they can do to make me happy. I've had producers do that. And also if producers like are just encouraging both before and after the cast. So, telling me like, hey, good job, guys. You're killing it. You're doing a great job. You sound great. La la la. Like having that producer that is just like your hype man. I know it's not like maybe a standard, but I've had producers who are like, you're doing so well. You're killing it. Dude, it just gives me that like extra oomph during my cast. I haven't had a producer say your shit yet, but obviously avoid the criticisms until after the show. And even after the show, just saying thank you and that you really enjoyed working with them. And it's kind of like a job interview a little bit, right? Because you're working with that person and you want to work with them again. And casters recommend producers, producers recommend casters. We're all helping each other out. So just really being a good person to work with, both of you doing your job right and being a pleasant person to be around. And if you do fuck up, which is totally fine. I know I made this a big deal before. Obviously, it's ideal if you don't fuck up. But if you do fuck up, just like keep it cool. I when I started casting, I was kind of like getting really frustrated easily at mistakes that I was doing or other people were doing. So just be that pleasant person of, if you make a mistake, just sorry about that. And learn from your mistakes. Don't do it again. But don't be that person who gets really toxic and bitchy and complains and stuff like that. Because that attitude, even if you're just a producer who maybe isn't on the camera, what you do off camera is equally as important, the attitude you carry. So having that positive environment, I know, has helped me a lot as a caster too.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. You brought up like not speaking in your ear too much. There's a pretty, although StarCraft 2 casters, as far as I know, don't like constant jibber jabber. And
Yeah.
we had a new guy in our ear for one of our broadcasts. And for StarCraft 2, we don't, to be honest, I'm not actually sure how you guys do it in Overwatch. I've never been at the very start of a broadcast. Anyways, we we have game number 1, here's player X, player Y, end game number 2. A lot of the time, we're just talking. We're just talking about something. So we don't intro to player X and Y immediately. And this, like, so we took maybe 2 minutes, which most games are like 10 minutes long, so really not too big of a deal. Not much is going on. And this guy, after about 20 seconds of us not immediately introducing the player, he was like, player introductions. And we just kind of ignored it at first. And he's like, player introductions. Kind of ignored it. It's like, player introductions.
No.
And we're just like, okay. So on the bottom, like, we finally just did it because he kept talking.
Dude, I had a producer one time who was like, okay, we're ready for break. And I'm like wrapping up a thought, we're finishing our discussion, which wasn't more than a minute. He'd be like, throw to break, we're ready for break.
Yeah.
Okay, you can throw to break. And I'm like, I heard you.
Yeah.
But I know Overwatch, like, we have to hit those ad minutes. So I totally understand that stress of like, okay, we need to hit those ad quotas. But like, I was like, I'm going to mental explode right
now. Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, good stuff. You definitely, I think, it answered his question. So thank you for that.
Hopefully.
It was definitely a different perspective I hadn't thought about asking. So thank you for asking that. Axlev out there. Yeah, I think it'll have to do it, actually, because this has gone a little bit over. I didn't even realize like the first 40 minutes had flown by. So I was trying to like squeeze everything in at the end.
It's good discussion.
Yeah. Still, I learned so much about the Overwatch world. It was really, really interesting. So thank you for sitting down and taking the time to talk to me and about some hard topics as well. Really appreciated that. I hope
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Where can people find you on social media, but also when do you usually cast and where?
I'm a bit of a Twitter fiend, so that's where I usually hang out at. So at LemonKiwi with an underscore, LemonKiwi_ on Twitter. And I do some YouTube every now and then, the LemonKiwi. I'll also be casting Overwatch Contenders, so the tier 2 scene in Overwatch, over at youtube.com/Overwatch Contenders. And we will be doing that Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays during the day. So that's where I work at.
Oh, very cool. That's more often than I thought. That's awesome. Try to catch one. Yeah. Thanks again. And I hope all of you out there enjoyed listening to this podcast. I really learned a lot of new things today. So it's been great. Please make sure to check out the Patreon and make sure to check out everything that LemonKiwi is doing. See you guys.